is a weird question to ask, but do you ever wish God would provide a little bit more
Yes.
advanced vision and runway?
Initially, as a leader, I was pretty terrified by it. I think God, the obvious answer is he wants to teach dependence. The reality is if you expect life to be easy, you will probably bail on this. And it's when you get a taste of it's worth it, and you have the expectation it's going to be hard.
Leading this, you've already alluded to it a couple of times. There's not a lot of staff that can sustain because you're dealing with the tough stuff.
I think you got to really own the question of are you called to something? And to anybody that I would influence, I would really press them. You think God changed his mind that quick?
Welcome to First and Focused, the podcast where faith meets leadership. I know you're going to put me on the spot. I don't know what you're going to ask me to say. I'm Mark Greaves, and in each episode, I sit down with business and industry leaders who put God first in their work and stay focused on building his kingdom through their calling. I could sit here and talk with you all day.
Keep up the great work, brother. Lord is using you powerfully. I love you. I love watching what Jesus is doing in your life.
All right, everyone. Welcome to First and Focused, the podcast where we bring in leaders from various industries who are putting God first through their work and pursuing Jesus in their mission. Today, we are honored to be sitting here with Mr. Scott Arnold, the director of Central Ohio Youth for Christ. So thanks for being here, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I look forward to this.
I've been looking forward to this one specifically since you said yes. You've got a lot of wisdom in that brain. I already told you we're going to try to unlock it and pull out as much as we can, but there's not a lot of leaders in our city who have been at it as long as you have. So
there's a few of us still knocking around, but it's a smaller and smaller group for sure.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, I got an intro for you. I do an intro for everybody. So here we go. Scott Arnold, you are the executive director for Central Ohio Youth for Christ, a position that you've held for nearly 30 years, serving the youth of our city through various ministries and services. Your operation comes in many forms, some of which are listed here: City Life, Deaf Teen Quest, the Equip Auto Skills and Sales Center, Grace Haven, Parent Life, Juvenile Justice Ministries, Wellspring Counseling, and YFC Camp. You're a graduate of The Ohio State University. Go Buckeyes. You hold a master's degree in biblical studies from Ashland University. You've been described, and this is true, by many in business as the best CEO not working in the for-profit sector in our state. You're a husband, a father. You have a surprisingly low number of gray hairs for your age, and most importantly, a lover and follower of Jesus Christ. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of ministries.
I hope I can live up to that.
Yeah. Well, you already are on the gray hair front.
There you go.
I comment about that all the time. I'm like, man, some of you guys you're just not giving into this old age thing.
I told you, I just won the lottery on genetics. I can't explain it. I get accused of dyeing my hair actually, but
it's all real.
It's all real.
Natural,
yes,
they would say. Scott Arnold, all natural. That's what we were going to get out on this podcast. If anybody remembers one thing, that's what's going to stick. All right. So first question is, there's a lot of people who I know who have had just a continual dependence on the Lord throughout their ministries, and a lot of nonprofit leaders, they talk about that and they tell stories. You had a story the first time we met about when you walked into YFC. This is a long time ago, but the situation that you walked into and the amount of trust and faith that you had to have in the Lord to provide through that moment. And I know there's been a lot of other moments like that, but can you just give us like the origin story, like what you walked into and how God pieced all that together?
Yeah. Gosh. So, it's funny. If I wrote a book, it would be entitled God and His Bad Ideas, right? Because every time God calls me into something, and I don't have a hotline to God, right? But there's been very specific times in my life where it was very clear God wanted me to do a particular thing. And when He calls me into something, it almost always, my first reaction is, oh, that's a bad idea. I think this would be way better, this other path. And coming into YFC was one of those. The second time I was in YFC for a season, and then I left. I came back in the early 90s, and then through a series of events, our chapter really was going through some tough season, and our executive leader left. And so I'd never joined up to be an executive leader. I was there to do ministry, but I also saw the potential for what we could be and could do, and felt like, Lord, is this what you want me to do? I'll put my hat in the ring, and I'm praying that if this is what you want, that it goes south, right? So they ultimately selected me. So I walk in the first day, and I understand there's some issues, but I have no idea what's really going on, right? And so I show up, And the first thing I wanted to do is just get a sense of our financials and whatnot. So I asked our gal to come in and share with me what's going on. She hands me a manila folder that's about that thick with a bunch of invoices in paper. I said, "What's this?" She says, "That's all the people we owe money to." And I'm like, "Well, how much is it?" She says, "Well, it's about 50 grand. I'm like, "Okay." And she says, and I said, "Well, how much money do we have in our checking account?" Because I didn't have any of it. None of this was put in front of me.
Right.
And then she's like, "Oh, about 7,000.
Oh, that's healthy.
That's
balance
great.
sheet right there.
We got payroll coming up, right? How much is payroll? About 10,000, right?" And she's, "Oh, and we're losing about 5,000 a month."
That's a great first
Welcome
day
to the job, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, "So what do you do?" And so there was this journey where, and what made it worse too was that we had some fundraising events that were coming that fall that I had been in charge of, and I'd raised a bunch of underwriting. So it was dinner theaters, right? So we brought this great Christian guy in that did a theater piece, and then we would do a little fundraiser, and it was fun, and it was free to people because we had it underwritten, and then we'd take an offering. Well, the underwriting had come in and been spent. The dinners hadn't happened yet. So the bills for all that was also right on the horizon. The next 30 days, I'm looking at, another 25 or 30 grand so it was not a great place. We had zero assets. I mean, our furniture was World War II surplus desks. By the time the late 90s, they weren't worth much.
Yeah.
I'd have to pay to have somebody haul them away. I mean, that was just what I walked into. So, and what I watched, both, like, what do you do with that? I don't know. I don't have a business degree. I don't have a business background. I don't even have a personal wallet big enough to cover this hole, right?
Yeah.
And we also didn't have a whole lot of donors at the time. We had a lot. Let me say that differently. We didn't have a lot of major donors.
Yeah.
We had one guy that gave us $3,000 a year. Everything else was like a $35 a month pledge.
Everything else was just
Everything
piecemeal.
else, yeah. And so it wasn't even like there's three guys I could go to other than board members.
And at this point, you're in the whole 43 grand. You got a $10,000 payroll coming. You're losing $5 grand a month, and you got total of $7 grand in the bank.
Right.
And you got more invoices on the way that you already know about.
Yeah.
You got to be just thinking,
what do I do?
Yeah.
Right. And so I went to my board chair, and again, that's a long story, but he was just kind of like, "Yeah, you're new to this. You don't really have much business background. I'm sure it's not as bad as you think it is." And I'm like, "You're right. I don't have a business background, but I actually do think it's as bad as I think it is."
Yeah, I know math. Yeah.
Right. So the journey ended up being a really interesting one, but I think I shared this with you, but for the first 6 months, I was the leader there. The money to make payroll would come in every time the day of payroll.
On that day.
The day before payroll, we would not have enough money to cover payroll. And we didn't have a payroll company, so we were writing the checks ourselves. So it could actually come in that day. We'd deposit it. We could write checks. It would work. So at the very last possible moment, the money for payroll would come in. And, again, $10,000 payroll. I think the most we ever had left over after payroll was $400. There was one, and so there's two other stories I would share. One was we had a time when when my assistant came to me and she said, "We didn't make payroll." Like, this was like 4 months in. It had been happening twice a month.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, we were $20 shy." And I looked at her and I was just like, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
It's not like God missed it by 20, but he's been doing this. Go back and redo the math. She went away, and 5 minutes later, she walked back with this grin on her face. She says, "Oh, I missed a $40 check." So I had $20 left over after payroll that time, right?
Yeah, but just your faith to say that God's been doing this whole time.
I don't know if it was faith or just like, this can't be true.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. I hesitate to hang some big label on my back like I'm some man of faith. Matter of fact, and that leads to the second story. So the second story, after about 6 months, I ran a little mini campaign with my board because I wanted to raise some money to bring a development person on to just help us. I need help in the space, right? So her first couple weeks on the job, I took a vacation. This was in June. So I'm on vacation. I call the office just to check in, and she gets on the phone. She says, "Scott," I said, "Yeah, tomorrow's payroll. Yeah, we're $4,000 short." I'm like, "Okay." She says, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Wait till tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow." "Okay, but what are we going to do?" I said, "We're going to wait till tomorrow." She said, "Well, what's plan B?" I said, "I don't have a plan B. We'll wait till tomorrow," right?
Yeah.
And, of course, called back tomorrow. $4,000 came in the mail, $2,000 from someone that we didn't even know. Unsolicited, unknown, $2,000. She's over the moon. She's like, "You're such a man of faith. You don't even need a plan B." And I said, "It's not that I didn't have one."
Yeah, there is no plan B.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's a capacity problem, not a great faith statement. Right?
Yeah, but it's still pretty incredible. So it just leads me into this next question. Like, these are only God stories, because obviously it wasn't your superior fundraising ability.
Bingo.
It wasn't your crazy network of really rich friends that had extra money to just, oh yeah, here's Scott, we'll cover that $43,000 gap. Do you ever wish, because this is a weird question to ask, but do you ever wish God would provide a little bit more advanced vision and runway? But what do you think he's teaching you by staying right there in step with you, especially in those early years and those early moments? Like, what was he teaching you in that?
Well, in my humble opinion, there's two funding plans for ministry in the Bible. One is manna, and the other is Nehemiah's plan, which is get a blank check up front. Right? So God and I have had that conversation on multiple occasions. Lord, I want the Nehemiah plan.
Yeah.
And so far, it's pretty much been manna. Right? And that's not totally true. There's been seasons when we've had more cash reserves, and then seasons when we've had less. I try to manage towards having about 2 months in the bank. Right now I have half of a month. Right? It just and what I think about that. Initially, as a leader, I was pretty terrified by it, because I felt responsible to make payroll, responsible to pay my bills. And God and I talked about that too. I don't feel like it's represents you well if I'm 90 days or 120 days with vendors. That doesn't seem right. Or not paying employees.
Yeah.
That doesn't, even though at the end of the day, if we still make the payment, it still doesn't feel like we're honoring our word, because nobody came to us and said, "We'll sell this to you as long as you pay us sometime in the next 6 months." Right? Yeah. And they have bills to pay. So the Lord and I have had a lot of conversations about that through the years. But one of the things that I've come back to consistently, I think God, the obvious answer is he wants to teach dependence. If we always had money in the bank, there wouldn't be a sense of, did God do that, or was it our fundraising prowess? Right? Yeah. Did God do that, or was it we're just good stewards? I think the answer, God wants to teach and wanted to teach me, but then through the years, what I've seen is he's grown that muscle with me. I won't say that I still don't get bothered if we get real thin, but I recognize a long history of seeing God provide. So I don't tend to get freaked out as much as I did as a younger leader. But I think God leads us into seasons like that so that the new generation of leaders can go through that experience.
Yeah.
I think God sometimes thins our money out so that our finance team can learn that, yeah, you don't always have the money in the bank, and yet God provides, because this is his work, right?
Yeah.
When I turn over staff in some key roles, it's funny how it's frequently followed by a dip in money.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've come to conclude it's God's way of teaching us, I'm here, I'm real, I will provide. I said I would, but that doesn't mean I have to provide before you need it.
Yeah. And you got to keep taking the steps anyway.
Yeah, it would be really good for you to learn that lesson, that I'm there.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears a little bit into like the ministry itself, like you guys, you're dealing with tough situations all the time. You're serving the youth of our city, some particularly through Grace Haven, the youth who have been taken ridiculous advantage of in some of the worst situations you can imagine. And then some just, kids that are coming to Christ and learning the truth and hope of the gospel and the love of Jesus, but they're not coming from these rosy scenarios. Most of them are coming from, pretty tough situations.
Right.
How have you been able to handle that for, the length of time that you have? How do you keep it focused on positivity and the opportunities to help the kids, and don't let the negativity of just reality creep in?
Yeah, it's a good question. You ever heard of the Stockdale principle?
Yeah, you fall in love with your captor or whatever it is. Is that right?
No.
That's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, Stockdale.
Yeah,
he's the guy that ran for as vice president.
Yeah, he parachuted into Vietnam, right? Like, wasn't he? He was Hanoi Hilton in Vietnam. Yeah, okay.
He talked about what are our expectations. If you have the expectation this is just going to be hard and we may not get rescued, that's okay. The guys that adopted that attitude in captivity, most of them did well by comparison to those that were constantly clinging to hope that this is all going to evaporate tomorrow, and then we're disappointed.
Yeah.
So what's my expectation? And what does the Bible teach about expectations? Does the Bible say it's going to just be rosy and ministry is going to be amazing and everything's always going to work out well? Or does the Bible paint the picture of, you read Paul's resume in 2 Corinthians, been stoned, left for dead, the list, you're like, really? Like, who would keep doing that, right?
Yeah.
But then you read Hebrews 11, you read other places where God's faithful people are constantly challenged through their entire journey. You got Moses following a pillar of fire. So imagine being Moses, right? Here you are. There's a day in Moses's life when he realized, I got million plus people with me, maybe millions. I don't remember the exact number. If we go one more day into the desert, we don't have enough food and water to get back to where there is food and water. We're all going to die if God doesn't create water in a desert. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where there's water out there, but we're just going to follow that pillar of fire. There's this sense of God calls us to follow him through really challenging circumstance where it's the wind and the waves principle with Peter. There's this, the reality is if you expect life to be easy, you will probably bail on this. So part of it for me has been assessing what is it that God's called us to. It's a spiritual war.
Yeah.
And there are lots of very tough things. So first, lower expectations to what it is that we've signed up for. We're going to follow God, and there's going to be great moments in it. But there's also going to be really hard stuff, and that's just part of it. It's not an indication, and I've heard people say this to me that didn't last long in our organization that viewed, that if it's not a rosy path described many different ways, then God must not be in it. And I'm actually of the belief it's the opposite.
Yeah, looks like it usually is.
Yeah. So so it's the journey that God takes us through where it is hard and it is sticky and it's difficult and there aren't easy answers and we have felt called. We do work with lots of kids in different circumstances. Some of them are just great kids from a good family that don't know Jesus, but we've had a bias historically of we want to be in tough places where there's kids that nobody else is going after for a lot of reasons. And so we intentionally, like I as a leader, steer towards those when an opportunity pops up. Like, yeah, we want to be in that population. Mm-hmm. But you start realizing, yeah, it's hard. But then you see how God works in an amazing way, and it's like, but it's worth it. And it's when you get a taste of it's worth it, and you have the expectation it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's
okay. And then there's another layer that comes where you actually, I don't know if it's almost feel like it's callous, but some of the things, it's just crazy. You start laughing about the craziness of situations you get into, and it can be funny. I mean, I don't know how we have enough time to wander into this, but I got a great story.
Do it.
So we had a girl and she was an urban kid, real rough kid. And she lived with her grandfather. Her mom was out of the picture. I think she was on drugs. Dad was never around. She lived with Grandpa. Grandpa's a drug dealer, right? Inner city
Grandpa's
drug dealer. Grandpa's a drug dealer, right?
Okay.
So she comes to Christ. And so our worker starts talking to her about praying and trusting God. And they decided, and I don't know who came up with this idea, they were going to pray that God would help her grandfather get into a legal job. Right? So they started praying for this. One day, worker picks her up and says, "You won't believe what happened." "What? My grandpa got a job." "Really? Where's he working?" "At a porn shop."
Oh, no.
So now, is that an answer to prayer?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's a great question.
Yeah.
Through the years, I don't know what I think. I think the where I processed it to ultimately was her grandfather wasn't a believer.
Yeah.
Scripture's really clear, Romans 8 and other places, that those without the Spirit can't please God. The idea that he's going to somehow become righteous wasn't what they were praying. It was, you get a legal job, and he did. So in some ways, yes, I think the Lord nudged him to get out of selling drugs, and he opted with his free will to follow a path that he was willing to follow. So in some ways,
step in the right direction.
It wouldn't be what I would celebrate.
Right.
So this is the kind of stuff, though, that you get into when you get into really thorny situations with people. What does growth, progress, what is answered prayer? The answers to that become very confusing at times.
Yeah.
And it's messy, but God's in it. And when you see then that young person begin to flourish, share the gospel with their friends,
Yeah.
and you're like, this is worth it. But it's crazy. It can be confusing. So we get thrown into a lot of those situations, and that's, I think, for me, how we sustain. We laugh about the craziness of it. Like I'm laughing about that story because it's just insane.
Yeah.
Like,
No, it really is insane.
It's like, what do you do with that? I don't know. I'll know someday. I will ask the Lord about that when I see him.
Well, there's probably dozens of these. Well, let me ask you that. So you've been seeing. I mean, so you probably have more than dozens of these because you've been at it for so long. I mean, it's been what? It's literally almost 30 years, right, since you've been at the helm.
Since I've been at the helm, it's been 1997
So
when I
it'll
became
be-
the executive leader.
That'll be 30 years next year.
And I have another 5 or 7 years of working in YFC when I wasn't the executive leader.
Okay, so that's a long obedience. You know, the quote, the long obedience, same direction. I got a two-part question for you. Is one, how did you sustain for this long? Because you don't see leaders hold the same position for 30 years in anything, really. I mean, it just doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot. And then leading this, you've already alluded to it a couple of times. There's not a lot of staff that can sustain because you're dealing with the tough stuff. So the path of least resistance, while even the strongest of people, sometimes when you've been going against the grain for so long and you've been working in the things that you guys work in, you fall into I got to get out. I got to do something a little simpler just for my insanity for a second.
Yeah.
How have you sustained it, and then what have you learned about leadership along the way?
Wow, those are deep questions on the leadership one. How have I sustained it? I feel called by God to be here. I go back to what I said originally. It wasn't my idea to come to YFC.
Yeah.
I know that. I hold my career aspirations with an open hand, and in some ways it's holy ground for me. I mean, I've been offered positions, a lot of that would be considered promotions or, move into our national leadership or whatever. The question is this what God wants?
Mm-hmm.
And I generally have the view, especially when you're called into a ministry, that if you're really convinced God's called you to a place, then you should stay there until it's really clear God's calling you to another place. Not that you got an offer that's less stressful, has better money, whatever, but is it the Lord? Because if the Lord called you here, until he releases you, why wouldn't you stay?
Yeah.
So to me, the burden of proof is why you wouldn't stay at the helm as opposed to moving on because of career advancement opportunity, which sounds really good, but in some ways that's not a calling. So that's a conviction I have.
Let me ask you this, because I'm like sidetracking your answer here, but I've encountered a lot of folks who have said that they were called to one thing, and then very quickly they have peace about being called to something else. Usually it's either simpler, more lucrative, more convenient.
Right.
Like that's just the way it looks from the outside looking in.
Yes.
But they say they've prayed and they have peace about that. I have no reason to doubt them because I'm not them. Exactly. I don't know what their relationship is with the Lord.
Yep.
But you haven't seemed to have that feeling where God's not just going to bounce you around like a ping pong. Like if he's calling you to something and it's super, super clear, usually there's some sort of like a deep rootedness to it. Is that, how do you see that?
I think you got to really own the question of, are you called to something? I think that word gets used a lot by people that you don't know how in depth they really spent the time ensuring this is from the Lord. And I actually also think sometimes it's not always, I wasn't 100% certain at the time. I was more than 50% certain it was what God wanted.
Yeah.
So I acted. In hindsight, not that long, 6 months, year and a half in it, looking back, I was 100% certain it was God's call. So, I have room for God doing whatever he wants with other people. But to me, and to anybody that I would influence, I would really press them. You think God changed his mind that quick? And if the people around you who are more mature in the Lord, would they agree? And if they don't, is it possible that your approach to how you discern God's call might be have room for some revision? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
I think it's important to take it seriously, I guess is what I'm saying. And you're right. Too often when someone refers to their calling, it does seem to follow a path that if you stripped away that God language would look no different than someone that's just looking to move ahead.
Yeah.
So, but I take it a little deeper than that, and I feel like it is an important thing. And I've had staff that made a commitment to be with us for. I think of one example. Made a commitment to be with us for a couple of years, and then felt called away.
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay, but you made a 2-year commitment to me, and I'm not releasing you from it because I'm not believing God's calling you away, and you can believe that, and then I can't make you stay. You can leave, but I'm not going to bless you to leave because I think you made a commitment here, and I'm not convinced that's God's call. I just think it's been really hard, and you want to get out of it.
I think that's really wise. Is that especially if you're going to step into spaces where like I'm about to go sign up for something that's not easy, that not a lot of people are going to sign up for, but I'm making my commitment. I feel called to it by God. And then when, adversity strikes, that's when it's like the rubber meets the road. Was it God's call?
Yes.
Am I committed? Am I disciplined enough to stay for the duration that I signed up for?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Right.
That's just like the personal relationship with the Lord. But I don't think everybody has a leader that'll do what you just did for that person. That's almost
that
for some people
not happy with me.
Well, potentially,
but they stayed, and it transformed their life.
This is what I was about to say: is that some people, when they hear you say that, they'd be like, "Man, that's rough." Like that leader, I don't know if I would like that. Nobody's going to like that. That's why iron sharpens iron. It doesn't say that like it's nice and easy all the time. They need a leader who is ready to call them out and help not only lead them in the position that they're in for who they serve, but lead them closer in their relationship with the Lord. And every now and then that's saying something that's kind of inconvenient.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, kudos to you for being that kind of leader.
I'm just trying to form in others what I believe God's formed in me.
Yeah.
Right. And we all should, I think, try to do that. So, that segues into the second half of your question. What do I think about how this influences leadership? I think a couple things. I think if you're going to do a God-inspired mission, you better be called. Because sooner or later, if God's calling you into a mission that he's leading, you will get to a point that the only reason to keep doing it is because you feel called.
Yeah.
Or not feel, you believe that you're called. It's a conviction issue.
Yeah.
Because if it's really in the front end of a hot battle, it's going to be painful, it's going to be hard, and it won't be it doesn't relent. And so every calling, foreign, and I say this to people that I have supported as foreign missionaries, I'll probe into this a little bit because I'm like, you get over there, sooner or later, it's going to get to a place that's going to be hard enough. You're not going to want to keep doing it unless you have the only thing that's going to keep you is, do you feel called? So do you feel called? I'll press people on that I support. And I have interestingly had a one instance that comes to mind of someone who was like, no, I don't feel called. I just feel like there's lots of things I could do with my life and this would have some great spiritual return. And so I want to do that. And sadly, that person didn't make it in that journey. They lived, but they didn't stick with that work. And I think that's a piece of Christian leadership, at least, that when we're called into a mission, we should really evaluate that heavily because I think that's the thing that keeps you in the saddle. And maybe an ancillary piece to that, this is my experience. I don't think it's just mine. I think the number one thing we trade in as Christian leaders is trust. Are you trustworthy from the donor community? Are you trustworthy from the young leaders that are around you? No leader is perfect. I got my warts. People that have led with me could probably make a list of things they wished I would learn, right?
Yeah.
I wish he wouldn't be that way or whatever. But one thing most, if not all of them, would probably agree on is that to the best of my ability, if I feel like God's saying do something, I'm on it. And if I'm wrong, I hope that I'm willing to hear it.
Yeah.
And over time, as you lead that way, what I've seen is I think God's able to grow ministries past what I would say. There's times where a ministry will blow up and it's really cool and sweet, and then 5 years later, it's like, what happened to it? And the reason is it wasn't sustainable. It hadn't grown to that sustainability place.
Yep.
But when leaders stick in places over time, God builds around them a team. He builds around a reinforced group, and that mission is capable of being developed into something that sustains past the life cycle of that leader.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense to
I've
me.
also seen God pull other opportunities for missional growth that he may want to do that can be built on top of a long-term stable leader that I don't think he would ever entrust to someone that's short-term.
Yeah.
So leveraged opportunities for the kingdom that aren't always obvious or visible become doable with leaders who stick in the saddle for time. So that's the thing I would say to many leaders is not just a sense of calling. Don't leave until you're really clear God's called you away, but celebrate the idea that longevity in a calling from God is something that he can multiply the older you get in ways you never would have perceived. It's not just additional, it's exponential. And I think that if our Christian leadership looked at leadership that way, I actually think in the short run it would feel like there's a whole lot less movement and is anybody getting anywhere? But over time, the kingdom itself would grow in ways that we can't imagine. So I'm a big advocate of longevity in Christian
think that
leadership.
you display the exact example, because what of all the things that we listed in your bio, what was happening at YFC when you took the helm in '97? Like, what were the ministries? Were there?
Yeah, we had a couple ministry sites. We had like 4 or 5 staff, a couple ministry sites. Our fruitfulness was, we ran a basketball tournament that a bunch of other YFC chapters brought kids to. That basketball tournament numbers were used. It was 80 to 90% of our fruitfulness for the whole year for the whole ministry.
Okay, so
right? It was,
and you
it
had
was struggling.
7,000 in the bank, and you were talking about we owe 50 grand. What's the impact now? I mean, I've been to these dinners. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar organization serving dozens of different ministries and taking on some of the toughest problems in the state. I mean,
God's blessed it, yeah.
But you don't do that without a longevity-minded, gonna go through it and take up my cross daily, die to myself, and I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That's exactly what I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, I say this to people. I think the number one thing I've done as a leader is just not quit.
Yeah.
And I think people look at me like, well, you know, what does he mean by that? Because I think the Lord has brought people alongside me that wouldn't have probably pioneered to get us where we're at, but are able and willing to join us, that are critical to some of the initiatives that we're doing. So they're able to join in. Their wiring is such that they're not the entrepreneur, but they are the person that takes it past where the entrepreneur can.
Yeah.
Like I've got people working for me that were way better at pieces of this than I am. My wiring just isn't that way, but I'm the guy that gets in when it's ugly and messy, and I build it out and stick with it, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, God's been able to grow and develop stuff that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
What's been the most fun? So when you look back at your time at YFC so far, a couple moments where you were like laughing with God, you're like, man, we're actually doing it.
Oh, it's a great question. I tend to, I think it's times when I see God show up in profound ways that I know it's nothing but him.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. So years ago, many people who know of us or have come and interacted with us, some know we have a significant footprint in Franklinton, just west of Columbus, called the City Life Center. So it's a building. It used to be a school. In the journey coming up to that, what drove that was our goal was to try to, how do we help urban kids?
Yeah.
It seemed like you could get them to say yes to Jesus, and then they would just fall apart within a year or so, and then they'd be gone, and you'd never see them again. And you're like, this isn't working. We're not building lifelong followers of Jesus. We're getting converts that just go back to the world.
Yeah. How
do we change that dynamic? So we did a lot of research. We came up with our holistic model as a solution to that. The City Life Center became a place to house that model. So it had to do with more interaction a week, different kind of programs that began to address what I would call the off-ramps to their Christian faith, that were more things like economic and educational and things that were barriers to them continuing to walk with the Lord. So we got into all of that, and we were looking at this school, and it looked like a crazy project. I had people shaking their head at me like, nah, that's a really bad idea. And I'm looking at it thinking, I think it might be a really bad idea, but I think it actually is probably the right things. I had no idea, right? I felt, and we had done a whole lot of research on, is this the right location? But at that time, we had a $600,000 a year budget. This was a $2.5–3 million project.
Yeah.
Right. And
Go big or go home, baby. Let's do it.
It felt like if the dog catches the car, what happens, right? That's how it felt, right? And I'm praying like, Lord, I don't want this if it's not from you. But we spent all this time and all this homework doing our homework and our research to say this is the path forward, and now we're here.
Yeah.
So should we bite this off or not? And so I was going to a foundation. There was a foundation that gave us some seed money to do some of that research. So we did a feasibility study on the project, on the property, on all kinds of stuff, right? And I was going back to report on the feasibility study. And I just prayed that morning. I was like, God, I don't want this if you don't want it, and I'm all in if it's of you. So here's what I'm going to do. And I've done this a few times with God where I've just kind of fleeced him. And I was like,
you have to, yeah. You lay out the fleeces and see what he's going to do. Make this thing wet, make the ground dry. Let's do it.
I said, the last thing I can afford is for them to give me 20 grand, pat me on the head and say, go get them, Scott. Right? Like all that does is commit me to doing the project with nowhere close to enough money to think I can do it. Right? So please speak through these guys. I'm going to ask them for $500,000.
Yeah.
I'd never asked anybody for $500,000. I hadn't ever asked anybody for 50 grand up until then, right?
Yeah. This
was an immense amount of money to me. As I said, most of our donors at that point were just monthly givers.
Yeah.
So, Lord, I'm going to ask them for $500,000, and I'm going to listen to their answer as an indication of what you think about this project. And if you don't want us to do this, have them laugh me out of the room. I'm okay with that. I can walk away feeling just fine, being told flat out, no, don't come back. Erase our number out of your, Rolodex or whatever. So I go there, I make this pitch, I ask them for $500,000. They're like, interesting. Can you wait in the hallway? I'm like, okay. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. So I go out in the hallway, I'm sitting on the hallway. They came out, I was like, well, it's lunch hour. Why don't you sit down and have lunch with us? I'm like, okay. I wonder how this is going to go. And some of them, a couple of them were friends of mine, so I knew them, and I thought they're kind of buttering me up to let me down easy. Yeah. At least we bought you lunch or something, right?
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they said, we really like your project, but we didn't really like your ask. I'm like, really? They say, yeah, we don't think you ask us for enough. So we want to give you $1.2 million if that'd be okay with you.
Wow. What did you do?
I still get chills telling.
Well,
that
your
story.
face just turned a little different color, like your blood pumping. Like I could. So what? Wow.
It wasn't about the money.
No.
It was about God's voice in that decision.
Well, He made it real clear.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So when you think, what makes you laugh? What makes you? It's those moments when God shows up in such an unmistakable way.
Yeah.
That you're just like, I know I'm in the groove that God wants me in, and I know He's with me.
Clearly.
And that's the stuff that drives me. It's those moments. And I don't have those moments daily or weekly, but I have those moments.
And every now and then I feel like He does that where He's just like, all right, watch this.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that just kind of smacks you differently.
Yeah.
It makes you feel differently.
You start getting a sense, at least in this journey for me, you start getting the sense of these moments where based on something someone said or have done, how God's going to react.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see God act in ways that are profound, and you're like, He's real, and He's right here with us in this moment in a really profound way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what my head goes to, is things like that. And then you laugh about it later because it's like, this just insane. Like, who gives you $1.2 million when you ask for $500,000? Nobody. Do you know of anybody that's ever happened to?
No, not you're the only one personally.
More than double what you asked for.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. No. So obviously that propelled the whole project forward.
Oh yeah.
How fast after that did it open up?
So funny story. Again, God at work. So we were organizationally still young, and like I said, I didn't have this broad donor base, and again, this goes back into some of our city reaching conversations. So Chip Wyant, good friend of mine, and I were on the phone. I'm like, Chip, I said, you've knocked around the city. I've knocked around this city. I'm looking for people that could write checks that could help me to get to, $2-3 million. I need people that could write $50,000 checks or better. I don't know anybody that is out there saying, I love ministry in our city, and if you're got a project, I'd at least be willing to hear about it. Mm-hmm. I don't know who that is. Do you? He's like, no. So So I went and I knocked on the door of Steve, a guy named Steve Risch. Steve was the head of the Nationwide Foundation. And Nationwide at the time was bigger in philanthropy in Columbus than the Columbus Foundation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Columbus Monthly, if they did a thing on philanthropy, they'd go to Steve Risch first.
Yeah.
Now it's obviously the opposite. Columbus Foundation's the big entity. But and Steve was a follower of Jesus. He went to Upper Arlington Lutheran. And so I'm like, Steve, I laid all this out, and I'm like, who do you know in our city? Like, you're the guy in our city that everybody goes to on philanthropy. Who do you know that are the Christians in our city that care about evangelism in our city? He's like, I got nothing. Right? There was one guy that I knew.
This didn't exist yet. Yeah.
There was one guy that I knew, and he just moved out of town.
Yeah.
Right? So there was nobody. Literally, there was nobody. And so I'm not saying there weren't people that were giving at that level, but they didn't self-identify. There was no network.
No way to know who they were. Right.
They didn't know each other. There was none of that.
Yeah.
Right? And so we started off on this journey, and then we got this commitment from this foundation. And part of the commitment was to hire a development team to both do the project, but to raise the rest of the money for the project.
Yeah.
And so that was baked into the project funding. So we hired this development team, and literally the first week they were on my staff, 9/11 hit.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the towers come down, wondering, what does this mean for us?
Yeah.
Right. And what it meant was we went through 2 years, from 01 to 03. We went through 2 years of knocking on doors, inviting people to come take a tour. Because we had bought the building with some of that money. So we actually owned it because you didn't want to pitch a project. You didn't own the property. Right. So we went ahead and bought the building. Whole nother God story there, but we got the building under our control, and then we started, and we did meetings 3-4 times a week. We did tours for 3 years, and got
nothing.
Like, nobody was given anything. There was one bump in the road. Columbus Foundation committed to give us 50 or 75 grand if we could match it. We had that commitment for an entire year. Got nothing against it. A year in, I met with them 2 weeks before it was over. They wanted to kind of an update, and I got nothing. And what I said to him was, you know what? These are kind of fun stories too. I follow a God I believe exists, whatever you guys think about that. So I believe God could bring that match in the next 2 weeks, but I have no idea how it would. And so would you guys, if I don't, would you consider extending it? That was my ask. I set up the meeting. But I don't want to rule out the possibility that God could still move. I just don't know. You know, people probably don't talk to Columbus Foundation leaders like that very often.
Yeah.
So I'm laying this rap out. But in my mind, I'm like, after a year of knocking on doors, right? 2 weeks later, I had the money in the bank.
No way.
Yeah.
See, it's like it just happens over and over.
Yeah.
I could probably keep you here for 10 hours in a row,
well,
and you could just keep rattling these off.
Because God is real, and that's the stuff that makes me laugh.
But your willingness to proclaim His reality to maybe even some people who don't believe it,
it's an opportunity to witness.
You believe it, right?
In a way that's tangible. It's not like, let me tell you the gospel. It's like, let me tell you about the God that I serve. I think He's real, and if He is, He could do this.
Yeah, and then He does.
I'm looking for it. So far, it hadn't happened. Still got 2 weeks left.
Jeez. I love it, man. Right? I absolutely love it.
All right, so I wandered through some rabbit trails, but if I were to bring that back together, God worked through that process. 2 years, nothing except that one blip.
One time. Yeah,
I got whatever they gave me. It was 50 or 75. It got doubled. So. And again, and then nothing and nothing and nothing. And then we were at an event that we were doing, a fundraising event, and one of the donors at the time came up to me. He's a funny guy. I laugh at him. He's on my board now. I told him this story recently, and he had forgotten it. But he came up to me and said, well, Scott, why don't you just get like 10 guys to give 100 grand each?
It's that easy.
I'm like, oh, why didn't I think about that, right?
Yeah.
So,
can you do that?
Why don't you show me how you did that?
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. So he wanders around in this event, and of course there's a lot of people at this event, and many of them we had met with over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, we got 10 people, each making $100,000 commitment, and
that's when you said,
months later,
you need to be on our board. we need someone like you, man.
Well, and he wasn't necessarily the great fundraiser. It was just God used him in really profound ways that, again, you look at his history for since, it hasn't been like that's what he does.
Every now and then, I feel like that really works. When someone that's not their thing, like they're not a fundraiser, that's not what they're known for, but they get passionate around a project or something specific, and
God
they ask other people they know, and then, lo and behold, here you go.
So,
That's
so what
unbelievable.
happened, and then the end of the story, because I know we got to move on, but the end of that story is that we called them that our table of 10. Those 10 people I looked at and I'm like, okay, in the whole city, now I know 10 people.
Yeah.
But we could say, okay, you're our 10 guys.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be better if those 10 could get a vision for helping to build a community in our city of people that cared about giving
Yeah.
to the mission of God,
Yeah.
right? And so through some encouragement, some of them weren't interested, but some of them jumped onto that, and that became the core people that launched something that later called the Columbus Stewardship Foundation,
Yeah.
that then evolved through some generational stuff into NCF Ohio. And so it's those guys that took that vision and made it happen. And now I go to an NCF Ohio thing and the room's filled with hundreds of people.
Full of people. And
I don't even know most of them anymore. It's like, it's so cool to me to see how God is funding missions in our city and beyond in profound ways that started with those 10 people.
And it really didn't take that long. That's the other thing. Like looking back, like years fly by. You know, because what year was this?
So it would have been end of 02, November of 02 is when he walked around that room, and 03 is when we.
And you're talking just a couple decades later, and really it didn't
Yeah.
even take that long because
Right.
that's been out and running for a while.
Yeah.
What God can do if just a few are willing to start.
Yeah.
Just take the first step with him and
Yeah.
see what he wants to do.
And, I had a little piece in that, but he and others, it's not me. I don't look at that like, I look at that like, see how God works through his people that get excited about being part of what he's doing and then get released into whatever that's going to look like. And so, so that's the story of, I pounded the pavement for 2 years, got nothing.
Yeah. Took some work.
And then what I got out of it was the ministry building that we were after and the beginning of a whole movement of people who care about the mission of God in our city that today is profound. And 20 years ago, you looked around and you're like, where do they exist? Right.
Man.
So it's pretty sweet.
I love hearing these stories. All right. I'm switching gears on you.
Yes, sir.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So recently, you and I, we're going to switch gears into Annette, your wife. We got the pleasure of having dinner with you guys at the last YFC gatherings that were taking place at the end of last year.
Yep.
And we got to sit across from her. Lovely woman.
Sweet.
Yep.
Sweet lady.
She's home with the Lord now.
She is.
As of recently.
Yeah.
So you're a bachelor again.
Yep.
I don't know how that's been.
Few months ago.
You doing your laundry? you staying up on the house? But no,
got to the point where I just buy new, right? I'm still washing it myself.
Well, how long were you guys married?
Well, it would have been 39 years a month after she passed.
Almost
So,
40 years. All right. So what's the secret? Because you guys clearly, when you guys were at the table, there was still a spark. You guys are still in love. I could tell that, not even knowing you guys together that long, knowing you separate. But what's the secret to long and healthy marriage?
Boy, I wish I had a silver bullet I could cough up. That's the hard thing is I think everybody's different in some ways, and then there's some things that might be common, and then I'm not smart enough to say what's common for everybody, but I can maybe share things that strike me about us. Let me qualify it like that.
Yeah, hey, that works.
I don't want to be arrogant enough to think I know something that profound because it's a really great question. But for us, I think there was a couple things that stand out to me. I mean, everybody, when you get married, this person that you have all these feelings about, that like they're the greatest person ever, and God's blessed you with this person, and then a couple of years in, you're like, this isn't the person I thought I married, and what's her problem, right?
They got plenty wrong with them. You figure that out pretty quick. Yeah.
So again, what I feel like is the transition from feelings to convictions is critical.
Yeah.
I'm committed to her no matter what. And that's what I said. Do I mean it? And so instead of leaving in the back of your mind the option, well, I'm committed to her unless it really gets worse and then maybe I'm out of here, versus I'm committed to her no matter what. And I felt that from her in the same way, not only at a convictional level in my own soul, but in a sense of even the language that you use. There was a couple times early on in our marriage where, in frustration, in a conflict, I would say, well, maybe I should just get divorced.
Yeah.
And then one day I realized that's just not cool. To even suggest that puts it on the table as an option for me or for her, either one. And so we talked about that and agreed we would never say those kind of things again.
Yeah.
So it's like doubling down on God can make a good relationship happen with any two people that are willing to put him first in their life and be committed to each other.
Yeah.
No matter how ugly it gets, that's what I believe, at least. And so being committed and at a level of conviction to each other. I think the other thing that we shared, and this was a blessing that we shared, it sometimes you get into marriage and discover you don't always share, but we shared a lot of similar convictions. So when it came to giving of our time or giving of our money or giving to God's work, we just didn't have conflicts or disagreements. It was more like, how do we make it happen? You know? And so there was a commonality, and part of that is because we had a mission from God that we were both on task with, both with YFC and then, of course, in our church. We were both involved heavily in our church. So the sense of conviction that we're on a mission together from God, God's knit us together to accomplish it, and that trumps all these other things. It's way more important than that. And those convictions, I think, made a lot of our life free of the kinds of conflicts that you can get embroiled in a marriage. Like, we never fought about money.
Yeah.
We never fought about sacrificing. It was either one of us would come up with ideas and the other one would be on board. Like, oh, you want to give? Sure, do it. And it was never like, well, do we have enough money? And have we been given too much this year? It was just, God moved your heart to do that, then act on it. And I'm with you. And so that helped a lot. It helped a lot getting old, because humility comes with age. So it actually gets a little easier as you stick in it longer.
Is it forced humility with age? It's like, well,
absolutely.
I don't have the option to have pride about that area anymore. So little forced humility in that for you.
Well, even stupid things like, as you get older, you begin to realize you don't remember everything. Because when you were younger, you thought about, well, you said that. Oh, I didn't say that. I said this. No, you did not. I remember perfectly what you said. No, you don't. I remember perfectly what I said. You know, you get into those kind of, and then you get a little older, you get a little humility going, and you realize, okay, first of all, why are we even arguing about that? And second of all, I'm not sure I can remember right anyways.
You might actually be right there.
That's right.
You probably have a point.
So I mean, those are some experiences that we had, and that was, it's funny. She was the person that was gentle on the outside and sweet, and she is and was, but she was a woman of deep convictions. And in the quiet of our relationship, she was at least, I wouldn't say she's a stronger personality than me, but she was at least as strong as I was.
Yeah.
And it would have been very easy for us, I think, to have fallen into deep conflict that would, without the Lord, it would have been, deep unresolvable conflict. But because of God in the center, maybe the last thing I'll add, at the risk of saying something that someone might take as an offense, and I'm not intending it that way, but it's a conviction that I do have, so I'll share it. I think sometimes we can base our Christian life individually and together on things that feelings bring about. So we'll listen to a song or we'll listen to this, and it makes us feel a certain way. And when we feel that way, then working through and partnering with becomes easier, but then it kind of drains away after I forget the song because I just had somebody yell at me on the phone or whatever.
Yeah.
I think God's word and building your life on the habit of intake of God's word in a deep and steady way, Romans 12:2, it transforms your mind, it builds convictions, and it builds a worldview that increasingly aligns with how God views things.
Yeah.
And I'm not dismissive of the value of Christian song lyrics and things like that to inspire us and to grow convictions, because I think it can, and yet somehow it doesn't have the same transformative power as God's word.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, the fact that we emphasize so much in our lives individually and then our ministry together, how do we ground our lives regularly and frequently and deeply in God's word, made a big difference in just the fact that our ways of looking at life became more over time conformed to the Father's. And as that happened, it made it a lot easier for us to resonate. We came to similar conclusions about a lot of stuff.
Man, the deep, it does. I mean, the deep conviction, the fact that you're committed to each other. I mean, that's profound. It seems simple, but it's a difficult mindset. And I feel like it's if that's true in your marriage, if both of you feel that way, then yeah, you can overcome a lot of obstacles.
Yeah.
Because there will be obstacles, but the commitment level, that's
I heard a leader
simple
say
but not
once,
easy.
I heard a leader say once before that, leadership that's inspiring gets people moving. And then when the inspiring leader leaves, they kind of run out of gas.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders that impart conviction leave and come back 20 years later and the person still is living out what they became convicted of.
Well, let me pivot into this question because this is a perfect segue to this. What I wanted to know from you, because I know it's true, you continued to lead even while yourself are grieving the loss of Annette. Leaders don't get the option to just turn off the switch while you're still at the helm. I mean, some do. I mean, you could walk away. It could be something so bad that you have to just walk away and remove yourself. But oftentimes you still have to lead while you yourself are going through personal adversity. What have you learned through this process?
Might be a little too early to be too profound on that, but I'm in the mix on that. Obviously, my wife passed just about 2 months ago, so it's still pretty fresh. In my situation, may or may not be different in the sense that Annette had been real ill for a long time. What she died of isn't actually what she was ill from, but she had just a lot of health issues through the years. She had rheumatoid arthritis and a bunch of chronic things. And so in some ways, while I wasn't expecting her to pass, the journey of her struggle and her suffering was profound enough that when she did, there was also a sense of relief. And that tempers my grief. I think other people who lose a healthy spouse that's in a great place and they're chugging along and their spouse is taken away, that's a shock in ways that this just wasn't for me. So I would add that's an overtone to my journey personally that is part of my processing. Is it wasn't expected, but it was in many ways. I'm sad, but I'm also grateful that she's not suffering anymore, that I'm not watching her suffer and feeling helpless, that I see where she's at. I have a conviction about where she's at that's profound, and a little bit of an experiential uptick that God's given me of just a sense of a visceral sense that she's living her best life right now. I don't know what it is she's doing, but she would never want to come back, and I wouldn't want to take her back from that. Yeah. So I love where she's at. I love that I know she's living her best life. I'm missing her a little bit or a lot in the moment, but it's okay. Yeah. That's helped. And like I said, that experience might be a little different from others who it's a shock and it's completely unexpected. So with that as a caveat, I also think in some ways it comes back to the very same things we talked about earlier, which is what's my expectation out of this life? It's a fallen world. And I get hit with things that are discouraging and disappointing at work, at home, as a life. And this is a big rock, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But in other ways, it's the same. It's just the next thing that in my journey that God's taking me through, that all I can do is look at him and say, I got nothing here. I got to trust you. Yeah. Help me with this. And he has. There's a sense of peace that I have. They talk about the peace that passes all understanding. I think that's the way it's said in Scripture. Yeah. In Philippians 4 there. I like to say it's just that it's peace that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. I shouldn't feel the sense of peace that I have in this circumstance. So it doesn't make any sense other than it's from the Lord, it's the Holy Spirit, it's people praying for me, it's a gift to me. Yeah. So in that sense, that has brought that rock down from being overwhelming. Like, I don't know how non-Christians walk through this journey, but it's made it just part of the landscape of challenges of following God and in the ebb and flow of life and learning to just keep looking at him and saying, help me make the next day happen. Help me to honor you with it. Yeah. And so that's what I've got so far. And I'm sure that this leg of my journey isn't over by any stretch of the imagination. And it could include lots of ebbs and flows that I'm unaware of right now. But so far, 2 months in, that's kind of how I'm processing.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to talk about it because I've learned a lot just watching you from a distance in certain ways, and this is a new way, and I know that there's a lot of other leaders that have too. I've spoken to them about it. So it's just the way that you carry yourself and conduct yourself and the way that you process, through these types of things, it is inspiring. Yeah. So, and it's
Praise
good
God.
for us.
Sometimes I don't know how I can be inspiring. I'm just a knucklehead, is how I view myself. But
it's the all natural black hair, man.
That's what it is.
We all want it. You have it. We're trying to get
tell
it.
You there.
All right, last question.
Yes,
so
sir.
I feel like if there was the kids of YFC, if there was kids that were out there that knew that there was leaders at Youth for Christ that were like you, who wanted what you want for them, if you were talking directly to the kids that are being served at YFC, what would your message be for the kids of our city?
I think there's probably 2 or 3 things that come to mind. I think that they need to know how good God is. They don't believe that. I look at it like Satan has a nonstop marketing campaign to persuade the lost world that God is mean. If he exists at all, let's start with that. If he exists at all, he's mean. He's got it in for you. He wants you into his control box so he can make you do things you don't want to that won't actually be best for your life. And that's what he's about. And so if you want a miserable life apart from what might be good for you, then sign up. That's the marketing campaign. And I think what goes with that is it's a fallen world. The guy that actually is doing that marketing campaign is the one that's actually in charge of the world, right?
Yeah.
So he's persuading you it's somebody else's fault for why this world is so broken, when in fact he's number one reason it's so broken.
Yeah.
He's persuaded the human race to follow him all the way back to Adam and Eve. And what he serves up that we ought to focus on is selfishness and greed and, power and all those things that don't produce anything good, and then encourages us to fight about it. And if he could persuade us to kill ourselves, he'd do that too, right? He's the thief that comes in to steal, kill, and destroy. That's who he is. And he's marketing this guy over here can't be trusted.
Yeah.
So that's what those kids are being presented with. So to me, how do we unravel that to say this guy is actually more loving and good than you could ever understand in this life? And he knows your name and he loves you and he wants what's best for you. And he's calling you to a life that will be transform you to everything you actually want. In our hearts, what we yearn for is a life that will be what heaven is.
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want what he wants for you. You don't realize it because what you want gets reshaped by the world system to look differently, and then you pursue that, and it's empty.
It's true.
And then you're miserable, and then it keeps going on. So understand the world you're in and what it's trying to persuade of you. Understand who God is, and then of course the third piece for me would have to be, and then how do you get to be part of this?
Yeah.
It's not you. You must be under God's thumb. It's like you're being invited at great expense to him to be part of a completely transformed life into a transformed eternity, and to actually get freedom from all this that you look at and you rightly hate. Like, I hate the conflict of this world. I hate you look out there and you see people's lives destroyed, and you see corruption, and you see anger and hostility and relational bankruptcy. Everybody hates that. But how do you get free of it? That's what I would say. It's all about knowing who that is and knowing who this is and knowing what you're. Why. And maybe there is one other thing. It's a little personal agenda right now in my life, a little stump speech because I see this generation is also, they recognize the brokenness of the world. And so justice is the hot topic, right?
Very much so.
We're going to bring justice to the world. And it's like, actually, God's plan isn't to reform the world system. It's Satan's kingdom.
Yeah.
His plan is to create a kingdom that is so good by contrast. People in this kingdom are like, why are we still here? Why don't we move there? Right?
Yeah.
And that's what he says in Colossians. He transfers us from the kingdom or the domain of darkness into the kingdom of his son. Right?
Yeah.
But he wants to create a kingdom that by contrast draws people. Instead of, the church isn't supposed to try to fix the world system to make it more tolerable. We still care about the people. We would invade the world system to try to love them in the brokenness they're experiencing.
Yeah, we're supposed to storm in there, not the other way around.
Exactly. We don't want to make it so comfortable in there that it seems like this is a great place. We want to help them discover the contrast.
Yeah.
Draw them over here. And so that's part of that whole message. It would be like, how do we understand the dynamic of what's really happening here?
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to escape this. Please, I beg of you, consider it.
That's really good. Yeah. One wants your ultimate demise and destruction, and they're going to deceive you any way possible to get you there. And the other one wants nothing but is what is good, what is loving, what is perfect, like what you were made for. The gifts and strengths to like fully be exposed, not just for yourself, but for the betterment of everybody around you and for the glory of God. Yeah. Unbelievable. That's really good. Well, this has been a lot of fun for me.
Me too. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. And I mean, you've, like I said, since we met, the first time we met, you've been a leader that has been inspiring around town. A lot of people say that. I said that in your bio. You could have done a lot of things in your career. You could have taken it a lot of different paths, but what you chose to do was something that was hard. You've stepped into places that are dark a lot of times, and you bring the light of Jesus in and through it, and you've been at it for 30 years. So thank you for just the obedience, the willingness, your leadership. For all the kids around town in our city that you've influenced over those 30 years, just thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks. It's kind of you to say that, but I'm grateful that God gave me the opportunity, frankly, and called me into it.
Yeah,
because he could have picked somebody else.
Well, we'll put all the links to YFC and all the different various ways that they can volunteer and all the different organizations. We'll put all those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Is there anything else where they should go, or anything coming up that people should know about?
Well, of course, we have our spring Be the Story, which is it is a fundraiser, but it's where we it's funny, what we showcase there is God at work.
Yeah,
it's not YFC at work; it's God at work in the lives of kids. We want people to come and see what God's doing. Then if they feel called by God and moved to help us financially and join that team, great. And if not, at least they go away seeing God at work in our city, and that's profound. So,
do you guys have a date on that yet?
I'm sure we do, but do I know what it is? I got to look at my calendar.
Well, I'll find it. And
I'll put in April.
I'll put that RSVP that link
Vicky
up there as well.
Will kill me if she hears this podcast and I didn't know the date, but it's coming up in April.
Vicky will strike this from the record. The question was never asked. No, well, thank you for being here. We'll put all the links, and for all past shows and for future shows, you can get books, resources, and then more links to the podcast at markreeves.com. But we're over and out. Thank you for watching the First in Focus show. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and then share with a friend.